Hello, everyone. Hello, my fellow ninjas. I'm Jonathan Crow, Director of Community here at NinjaOne. It's been a while for me, guys. I feel this feels good to be back, although I feel like I'm going to be a little rusty, so bear with me. But I feel like this is a great stream to get back into the swing of things with. We've got some great folks here who are being very generous with their time. So thank the three of you guys very much for doing this. Let's go around, and before we dive into our conversation, you can share who you are and give a little context, because what's really cool about this conversation that I'm excited about is you're each coming to this topic from a slightly different angle, related but a little bit differently. And so I think that's going to be a really cool part of the conversation that we'll be able to get into. Why don't we start with the man, the myth, the legend, Mikey?
Hi, I'm Mikey, also known as homotextual in various communities. I run an MSP in the UK. I am technical director for a second MSP in Ireland because I didn't learn after starting the first one that it was a terrible idea. Or I like complicated life, one of the two. I focus mainly on automation, process, and compliance. And yeah, excited to be here and talk about this because this is a great subject.
Awesome. A huge contributor to our Discord community. I'm imagining a lot of you folks joining are already members of that. If you're not, we'll put in a QR code where you can join that and fix that. Okay, let's go over to Graham, another very active member of the Discord community. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Graham.
So I'm Graham. I've been at an MSP for almost 6 years now. And I come from a background before that in startups, large corporations, mostly software development and SaaS hosting. And I am now responsible for managing a team that is responsible for security for us internally, as well as our customers. I do all the research and development for any products that we're going to use or need to review on behalf of a customer. And yeah, a lot of compliance and consulting.
Amazing. Awesome. So you're definitely the right person to have on this call, being responsible for evaluating software. And finally, last but not least, Tim Lanning. Tim, very good to see you here. You're a familiar face for anyone who has been on the IT Leadership Lab streams. And I'm so glad that you came to join us here today.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here, and totally not having any imposter syndrome sitting in a call with folks that I see on Discord that are pulling their weight, and then I'm just a lurker on the Discord. If you find a guy named Tim Burr, that'll be me. That's a pun. But no, I'm a VP of IT, the VP of IT. There's only one of me, for a small nonprofit in, not so small anymore. We've been growing like crazy. A small nonprofit in child welfare in South Texas, service about a 28 county in Texas region, all remote workforce, a lot of challenges, and we're a nonprofit, so let's do it with a hill of beans. But when it comes to this topic, excited to come from it for the nonprofit internal IT perspective.
Amazing. Awesome. Okay, so let's there's so much to cover here. It's such a good topic. I think we were having a prep call earlier yesterday, and getting into this, there's so many things that we could approach things from. I think the first would be you kind of get a sense from your guys' intros where you stand with this process and who owns it. But maybe let's start there and get a little bit more detail. I'm curious about, okay, what starts software evaluation for you all? What kind of triggers that process to happen? And who owns that? Because obviously that can vary a lot from place to place. And then, oh man, we're going to get into things like criteria, which obviously are going to be unique to some organizations. Everyone's going to have their own kind of criteria that they weight more heavily than others. There's a ton to get into, but let's start there. Tim, why don't we start with you? From your perspective as the VP, are you the one who starts software evaluation? Do you have members of your team who are coming to you to kind of instigate this process? What does it look like? Do you have a process that's formal?
We do, as of a few months ago. A lot of my job has been, hey, here's the dumpster fire, fix it. The organization kind of understood the stakes, which was great. I love that. But a lot of that means, okay, we got to stand up processes. And so honestly, we're in the boat of, we're in a work in progress. But it does kind of fall to me. I am the master spinner of plates. And boy, do I have a lot of them. This is one of them. So, for us, it really starts as I'm there listening. But the thing that I've really expressed before in the leadership lab, and shout out, kudos to Brittany, and the community there. One of the things that's kind of been laid out is I'm just a listener. I go in and I insert myself into conversations, and I ask questions sometimes that are, okay, what are you trying to do? How can we help you with that? Did you know that IT can help you with that? No? Congratulations, here we are. So that's, I think, where we have to start and where I have to start. And in my particular case, as a nonprofit internal IT, right, the VP, I'm inserting myself into those conversations and really guiding it from there.
I mean, do these processes also start with, vendor outreach from like more of an annual perspective? Let's stick with you, and then I want to kick it over to Graham and Mikey too to get their sense of how their process really looks like. I mean, is this like okay, every year or so we're going to kind of like look at our stack? I mean, is it okay, this vendor's been hassling me for however long, and I finally want to pull the trigger on something? Or how does this kind of usually kick off for you guys?
So what we've kind of settled on, and we're in the process of doing this for the first time. So what I'm about to lay out could completely not work. So your mileage may vary. Don't necessarily look at what I'm doing and saying he's got it figured out, because my wife loves to tell me I don't have it all figured out. Love my wife. But what we do, we're planning to do an annual audit of everything, stack audit, like you mentioned. But definitely as things come up, as I'm hearing from accounting, hey, what's this bill for? Because sometimes that happens. Or, I hear some need somewhere, like we're pushing a big AI initiative right now, trying to kind of grapple with that whole topic, because there's a lot of different, it's shadow IT like crazy in the AI world right now. So trying to bring that in. But definitely as pain points arise, you do evaluate that. And so I do that as needed. And definitely, if I'm getting hassled or somebody's being difficult, I'm going to evaluate whether it's worth it. I'm going to go find alternatives. I'm doing that right now on a lot of things. And it's just me doing the work. So happy to take that on. That's, other duties is assigned, and I'm happy to spin those plates so my team can focus on incredible support.
And so this is interesting too. This is, I think, one of the key differences with being in an internal IT department. This came up with our discussion, Graham and Mikey, yesterday. I think from you guys, with talking on the MSP side, we're going to focus on how you're evaluating software that you'll be using for your own operations, right? But Tim, I mean, you're talking about accounting. You have the departments of your organization, and they have their own needs. Where's the line with evaluating? How much evaluation are they doing, and they running this, and then like getting your consultation or approval after the fact, after they've already bought something? Or how much are you plugged in kind of early on in that?
If you had asked me this question 6 months ago, I would say 100%. I'm looking at that being like, you bought how many Canva licenses and you didn't do the Teams version? 5 different departments have the same thing, and what are we doing? We've really worked. I have an incredible director, and I'm going to, he's honestly the reason that we're flying the way we are. Like he's incredible, compliance background and everything. So like he understands this intuitively. And so just kind of having him help me with that is huge. He's been my bulldog. I'll go unleash him on the departments and he'll go figure it out. So knowing when to use those people that have that more in mind is definitely part of my wheelhouse as well. But definitely 6 months ago, it was a lot of everyone has everything. Now we've really been able to standardize things, especially as things roll off, like things like DocuSign, we were really able to consolidate into one and actually save money. And that's just because no one was thinking outside of their immediate need. And that's where IT, at least, I know, from the internal IT perspective, that's where I provide a lot of value, I say, well, I know this department, this department, this department. We can actually save everyone money if we do this, and we're a nonprofit, so we're very about that. So
yeah, absolutely. That offering that oversight and being able to kind of audit the all along and see where the overlaps are, seeing how you can consolidate, that makes a ton of sense. I want to come back to you. I want to skip over, but let's come back to you because that really leads nicely into the criteria. But before we get into that, Graham, how about let's switch over to you? Coming from your perspective, are you going through regular audits, or how does this process? You said that it's part of your role is to kind of constantly be looking out to see what's new, what's changing, and you're in charge of the evaluation. So tell us a little bit more about that. Like, what starts that process out for you, and what does it look like in general?
Yeah, so for us, we get things from a number of different directions. Sometimes, it can be compliance pushing something on us where we find that we have a gap and we have to say, okay, how do we address this gap? What tooling can we use? Is it something we already have? Is it something else that we need to go and look at and acquire? Sometimes it's customers coming to us with potential issues or concerns, or they have a different compliance program they have to meet, especially if you work with customers in regulated industries like finance or anything like that. So there can be a lot along those lines as well. Internally, I'm also constantly evaluating, just through the metrics that we collect, how much our tools are performing now and whether or not they're performing to a level that we need them to. So a real example right now is, our third-party mail filtering tool that we've been using historically since I started here. It's really not fantastic anymore. And, we're really in the market for something else. And, when we start getting into criteria and stuff like cost, you can kind of see how, if you're not evaluating on a regular basis, you can kind of get a little bit of sticker shock in some cases, right? Especially if you've got grandfathered in on something and now you're looking at people would like to say a 50 or 60% increase, but sometimes you're looking at a 500, 600% increase, right? And it can be shocking, but it's also something that, you need to do. So, we look at the metrics, we look at our ticketing, and how can we make all those better through, tooling and automation.
Would you say that
on your regular reviews, sorry, jumping in on your regular reviews, Graham, I don't know if you're doing the same, but what we started doing a while ago was, and we haven't been great at regular reviews, we're formalizing that bit now, but we have kind of informally done them, is tracking what's the current, so a vendor we've been working with for 10 years, Ninja, for example. I had this conversation with our Ninja account manager. Every time we get a new Ninja account manager, which thankfully isn't as often as it is with some other vendors, but every time we get a new one, because they keep apparently we're difficult enough that you work with us for a year and you become like VP of customer operations for Europe or something. But yeah, every time we get a new Ninja account manager, we have the conversation with them of like, okay, if we were coming to you now, what's the pricing we'd get? Ignore what we're on. What's the pricing we'd get as a brand new customer talking to you today? And we record that and that's kind of how we're helping to manage that sticker shock, is actually, okay, we might be paying this, but if we were a new customer today, we'd be paying this. So when we're comparing to other tools, we're kind of comparing what we should be paying as a new customer with what we would be paying with another vendor.
Now, Mikey, just as another wrench in this conversation, you and I talked about this yesterday too, as to, you might be looking at comparing an apple to an apple, but what happens when the Gen 2 software comes out and you're starting to compare costs between a Gen 1 product and a Gen 2 product,
and suddenly you're comparing an apple to a Concorde.
Yeah, exactly, right? So there's that wrench to throw into things as well. But yeah, I think that if you're looking at kind of staying in the same lane or in the same, discipline of tool and responsibility, aside from a generational change, I think that's a fantastic idea of saying, yeah, like, a lot of us know and understand that you get purchasing discounts by volume or purchasing discounts by loyalty and so on and so forth. But that doesn't really represent what you're going to get if you have to switch. So
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's a great way to kind of put the sticker shock in a better perspective.
Well, it sounds like, Graham, especially one of the advantages of with your role being able to focus on this. I mean, would you say that having and then each of you guys talking about having the benefit of making this a more regular process, the kind of like stack audit and really looking across where the opportunities, keeping track of pricing. So you're not so when there is a sudden need to make a change, whether that's a sudden compliance change or a security change, then you're not starting from scratch. Like there, it seems like there's maybe some benefit from kind of like an ongoing process to this. Do
Yeah,
you think that's fair to say? And I mean, how do you fit that in when like Graham, you've got your own role for that when you're trying to put out all the fires, and like Tim was saying, being the a lot of folks are in that role of you're putting out the dumpster fires every day.
a huge part of the regularizing it for us is trying to avoid that cliff edge where you kind of, because we've all been there, we've all been backed into the corner where you have no choice but to scrap a vendor and it's not going the way you want, and inevitably your kind of 6-month ramp you'd plan to swap a vendor suddenly becomes 6 days, the day before you're due to start. And the regularized kind of compliance and re-auditing the field and seeing what's out there on a regular basis really helps to avoid those pitfalls and kind of softens that cliff edge into more of a gentle-ish hill, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the other
I would
thing
say-
that you said is like there's also the terms, right? I mean, we're talking about when you get into agreements with vendors, and then you have, you're keeping track of when your agreement is up, and maybe there's the clock, that you set there. We want to make sure that we're investigating 6 months out, 9 months out, whenever that is.
Yeah, so I mean that brings up a couple of interesting points, and I don't want to, kind of scatter this conversation, but I also don't want to let them go either. So the first is, I think I just lost all of them now, to be honest. But like if you are going with a new vendor and a new software, and it doesn't matter if you've transitioned to it or whatever, you might want to consider for the first while before committing to that 1, 3, 5-year term. Go to a month-to-month contract, pay the premium, ride it out for 3 months, make sure that it works the way that they've said it does. We just did a transition of our internal AI tools, and we're going month to month because it's, you never know with AI, it changes so fast that what might work today might get surpassed by something else that comes in at a comparative point, or maybe they do this radical price increase out of nowhere like Microsoft likes to do, and you're kind of handcuffed, right? And so keep your options open while you're maybe feeling out a new vendor. But what was the original context that got us here?
Well, I'm going to switch off from that. I'm basically talking about the term limits, and or your terms.
Oh, the evaluation cycles.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, my other thought on that too was that to set reasonable timeframes on your reevaluations or your ongoing evaluations. Like Tim, you were saying you guys do it kind of once a year in one shot. And as an internal organization or a singular organization, that might be something that you can reasonably pull off. As an MSP that's responsible for my own internal doings and 30 to 40 or 50 customers, whatever we're up to now, across every vertical that's out there, I can't do that, right? So I'm setting, I've got this tool, I'm very comfortable with it. 2 to 2.5 years down the road, I'm going to start my reevaluation of it, and at my 3-year mark, then I'm ready to either renew or release.
Very good point. I'm interested. So my question, you brought up something really interesting with AI, and I think about this. What made me think about is we just had to get a new car, right? And we decided to go for let's do electric. And I wasn't going to buy an electric car because everything's changing so fast. So I decided to lease it, right? And it seems like a similar thing with AI tooling. Things are changing so rapidly. I mean, we could have a whole separate stream just on evaluating AI tools, but I'm curious for you three and also everyone in the chat too. Are there certain categories of software that you consider? Like, does the category of it make a difference in terms of how often you're going to evaluate, how long you want to commit to. I imagine what I'm thinking through is like there are some things like a PSA or an RMM on the MSP side of things where you obviously don't want to be evaluating that like every 6 months or it's just such a big migration pain, right? Versus something that could be a little bit easier to maybe transition from. So maybe that's a component. Maybe the AI angle of listen, things are moving so fast in this category, we're not going to make a long-term commitment. Are there other things like that that you kind of think of? Okay, yeah, this is going to impact like our cadence of evaluation.
I think, as well as cadence, though, not all evaluations should be or have to be equal. So we will evaluate Ninja's pricing at least once a year to find out what we would pay as a new customer. We don't actually do a full evaluation of Ninja like we would if we were seriously considering in the next 6 months to a year to 2 years changing the tool. So we will do kind of lighter touch evaluations regularly, at least yearly, for software, even if we're not planning to change it, just to see kind of where we are. We might not evaluate competing vendors. I'm not sure who the competing vendor is for Ninja currently. If any of them would like to, stand up and actually modernize their products, that'd be great. But until then, but yeah, different types of evaluations for different circumstances are just as important as cadence. Tailoring your evaluation to the type of product as well. There's no one size fits all set of evaluation criteria. If you're trying to evaluate your PSA in the same way as you're trying to evaluate the security tool you're going to put on 1,500 endpoints across your customers, something is going to go really badly wrong in that process. And you might end up with a really good PSA tool and a terrible antivirus because it's behaving like a PSA tool.
Now, Mikey, when you do that smaller evaluation, is that when you also ask for an updated SOC 2 record and like a most recent pen test result?
Yeah, that's kind of like our security audit essentially, but we've started including like, what's your current pricing look like?
Yeah, so one of the things we talked about yesterday was standards and how they can drive things too, right? So that's also part of the CIS is the vendor management, right? So that's a good thing to be doing.
Yeah, and that's something I'm gonna pull up a link. I'm gonna try to grab a link for the CIS standards for vendor evaluation to share with folks.
I'm curious from Tim's perspective though. So Tim, just internal IT, do you guys work with an MSP at all?
No.
Okay, so how does that kind of sit for you? That sort of regular evaluation, sort of, and different types of evaluation. Like, do you evaluate different tools differently? Because like as an MSP, I kind of get it. Like we've got like, if we change our antivirus tool, we're changing it. We're not just changing it for us. We also have to factor in like 50 clients and their disparate needs and all the whining. God, the endless whining about change.
Oh, hey, if you think that whining is not here in internal IT,
sure,
I
got
you.
Like
You're
one
good.
organization's worth of whining and a director you can talk to make it quiet. I have to talk to 50 directors to make it quiet.
I know. Honestly, I will never complain about this process because I know I'm dealing with a 50th of what MSPs are, and that's where honestly,
they all know your name. That's the downside. You have just as much pain.
It's different pain, right? It is, but it really. And one thing I was going to say too is when we're evaluating software, like what y'all are mentioning with going in and saying, "Hey, I need your SOC 2," right? We have requirements from contracts that we have with the state of Texas. We have to be beholden to, and that's been a great guide for for kind of building this process out. And that's one thing I would say too, like if you're in my boat in internal IT and you're wondering how in the world I do this process, if you have a contract or if you have any sort of policy, go start there, obviously, because that's the thing you have to do. Anything else is a nice to have. You have to fulfill the must. But what's really nice is to be able to go in and do exactly what you're mentioning. We actually do very similar things where we say we need security, we need to know compliance side because we're handling PII for children in foster care. All those things. We have those considerations. That's a very powerful lever I have in negotiation, but also in evaluation. Also, I have the I'm a poor nonprofit, money please lever of, oh man, what if my grant funding gets cut? Oh man, we're facing a budget shortfall. You gotta do something for me, man, if we want to stay on this. You find your levers that work. And as a nonprofit, we genuinely do have that as a lever, right? That's not me bluffing. It happens. Funding changes, but I don't know. I hope that was kind of a good answer.
Yeah, well, okay, so let's get into the criteria, because I think this is something that obviously we said, like, it's going to change a lot depending on what tool you're looking at, depending on what your own situation is. But yeah, I think it's also just a really good thing to share out there. So I don't know if this framing is going to work necessarily, but let's try it anyway. Tim, do you have, like, maybe you don't have to worry so much about the ranking, but like top 5 like ranking factors of criteria. Don't get caught up too much in like the number one unless you have a clear number one. I mean, you talked about compliance standards, things like that. What are some other criteria factors that you consider really high on your list?
Number one, cost. Surprise. We're nonprofit. And that's honestly, I report directly to the CFO. So I have to have that front of mind. If I'm going to pitch anything, I have to immediately put it in a numbers game. And she has to see exactly where that fits into the spreadsheets and everything, and what funding can be allocated, nature of the beast, right? And obviously I care about that too. I want to make sure I'm not spending $10,000 if I don't have to. But it's all kind of that slice of the pie, right? So cost being a big one for me in my role. Security is very important to me, and that's honestly alluding to the AI process. I had a conversation earlier this week where my CEO, who is diligently using an AI tool to do basically all of their work, I had to kind of rip the Band-Aid off and be like, you're using the bad one. Sorry. There's other options. So that was a fun conversation to have. But anyway, doing that in a disciplined way in and of itself. But security, big concern to me. If one of our tools gets breached, we have to go report it to the state. And then that's a whole amount of potentially contractual liabilities that we're subject to, sanctions, all the things. We have to pick very carefully. Cost, security, and then just usability. Like my techs can learn anything reasonably. We can use any tool, even if we have to speak COBOL. But probably not. Please don't make me do that. But I love stealing Mikey's code from, doing PowerShell in Ninja. It's honestly like, Mikey, you've like radicalized my life. But thank you.
Okay,
just wanted to say that.
Just to be clear, for various government agencies, I did not radicalize Tim in the way that the government.
No. He made my life easiher. I'm not on any watch list that I'm aware of, so we're good. But
maybe now.
Thanks. Somehow I got myself in trouble. But just ease of use, right? I care how it works. So like, as we're looking at AI tools, and I'll keep picking on that, and I'm not going to go in depth on that, but it matters to me, not as much as the cost or the security, but it does matter. Can my frontline worker use it? Otherwise, what's the point? What am I doing here? So honestly, top 3, I would rank it in that order.
Okay, I thank you for that, Tim, and really hope we didn't put you on a watch list. But to dig into that a little bit, what happens when we're talking about cost and security, right? What's the famous saying? You can have things like fast, secure, cheap, but you can't have all 3. Like, you can have one, pick one or something.
2.
Yeah, thank you. Pick 2. What happens when there's a discrepancy there between cost and security, when there's like push and pull? Have you had any instances that you can share? You don't have to name vendor names or anything like that.
Well, I will say, so speaking of we did have an MSP up until about, the contract rolled off in January of this year, but we paid them until February. Pain point. Whatever. That's bad. But along that line, right? Like, cost, they were charging us an absurd amount of money to do absolutely nothing, right? And that's why we got rid of them. If they had been providing value, that would have been a different conversation. So to kind of answer that question, though, I'm willing to go to bat for a tool that fulfills the security and ease of use, even if it costs a little more. I'm willing to go all in if I need to on that tool. So like to justify a killer RMM, that's also my ticketing system, that's also all these things, and we're doing even more, right? I'm willing to go to the hilt for that one. Whereas something that's a nice to have, like a sandbox tool for my cybersecurity team, okay, I'm not going to go spend as much capital on that. But that's just me saying, look, and I've had successful conversations this way, so maybe this is the point. I work directly for the CFO, so I'm able to go to her and I give her a too long didn't read in the old internet fashion. I give her, hey, this is what you need to know. Here's how much it's going to cost. Here you go. If you want to nerd out on this with me, here's my justifying documentation. And I send that in an email. I send her a text saying, hey, you got this in your inbox. If you need me, call me. And with that, you would be surprised what I've been able to pull off that wasn't in our budget. So I'm not saying that you have to know your CFO. I like to think I know my CFO, and that works really well for her. And she knows, and this is the point, I'm not asking because I want it. I'm asking because there's a need that we have to fill. She understands that deeply.
I think that section you referred to as like the nerd out with me section has way more value to it than anything else in what you're providing, right? You're trying to justify a cost of a technical solution to a business problem. And if you can point out what the business problem is, what the technical solution is, and this is what it's going to cost. I mean, I've reported directly to CFOs in previous lives too, and it's always been the same thing. As long as it's required for the business and you have the justification for it, it's up to them to find the budget for it, right? And you've done your job, let them do theirs. And I've found that I've had the similar experience of you'd be surprised what you actually get.
But even as an MSP as well, being able to like clearly articulate to particularly those contacts who control the purse strings. And I think, internet speak or otherwise, a TLDR is phenomenally important. Like that non-technical, approachable summary of like, these are the highlights, and if you want more, here's the meat and two veg. But actually, like just that summary. Since we started doing that routinely, like at the top of every quote, at the top of every proposal, like a no more than a paragraph summary. Conversion rates through the roof, and like it's like I kind of like I sit here nodding along to your cost thing, Tim. So like we're an MSP. 92.4% of our client group as of this morning are nonprofits, and the remainder are predominantly legal. So I work with a lot of nonprofits and then a few lawyers. It's far easier to get the money out of the pockets of the nonprofits than the lawyers, but that's it's the nature of lawyers, I think. How do you evaluate currently like the hidden costs? Do you include those when you're summarizing for your CFO? So like, okay, this vendor that we're using for antivirus right now, they're affordable. The product isn't bad. The product works. It meets our needs, but they're a pain to deal with. We spend like 3 hours a month doing billing reconciliation for them, or we spend every ticket takes 3 days. Are you including those like intangible costs where it's actually your team's time being sucked up as a cost when you're evaluating vendors, when you're pitching replacements?
Yes, and here's why. Number one, the thing that I think has helped me succeed more than anything is just pure and honest transparency with anyone at any time, right? Like if I have to hide the ball, I will, but like I would prefer not to. I would rather give you all the information, because then just think of the benefit of that, right? I go to my CFO with, hey, here's the hidden costs. She can decide, hey, whoa, hold on. You think that this is a low priority, but like from my perspective, or she sends that to the executive team and suddenly it, there's more eyes on it, and the CEO's like, whoa, no, hold on. That's way more important to me that you not do that. I'm automatically, in the multitude of counselors, there's wisdom, right? So that's kind of the principle that I like to live by is I will give them the hidden costs. I have no interest personally in kind of trying to get what I want through obfuscation, right? I'd rather us have an honest conversation, and if I lose, right, and I have to go find another tool, as long as it's good faith, it's not like, no, hate it, right? Then we'll talk about that. But if it's like they brought up a perspective I wasn't thinking of, I win. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how, Mikey, with hidden costs, explain a little bit more what you're referring to there. You mentioned, the time it's actually taking your team to utilize the tool. things that go beyond just the plain, per device or
Sticker
whatever
price,
the sticker
yeah.
price is. Talk a little bit more about that, and then like, how do you discover that? How do you discover what those things actually are without actually the hard way?
Yeah, I'm not sure there is a way other than the hard way. If like, we will try where possible to reach out to existing customers of a tool if we know them, if we can find them in the community. I've been known to post in various communities as, anyone using this vendor, and can we have a chat? Sometimes that works, but then sample sizes are weird. Like, you can get like hundreds of glowing reviews on a product, and actually then when you come to use it, you slip through the first crack that's available, and you get this terrible experience for a product that everyone says is phenomenal. That's always going to happen. And evaluating intangibles is, by the very nature of the beast, difficult. Some things you will only learn from experience, but some things you can find up front. For us, a lot of our evaluation is a chunk of our evaluation is pre-sales before we've even engaged a vendor. So a chunk of our criteria are almost kind of public-facing checks. Right? Well, what does their filing history look like with Companies House here in the UK? Like, are they filing on time? Are they filing late? What do their accounts look like? There's a bunch of those checks that we don't need them for. There's a bunch of checks that start when we engage their sales process. So like, when did we submit a request for a quote, or when did we reach out first, and how long does it take them to get back to us? Because actually, if they're not hungry for our business, then they're going to immediately fall into one of two camps. Either service across the board is going to be terrible, or they are currently, and this happened with Halo. When we first started with Halo, we almost dropped Halo before we got anywhere through the sales process because it took 3 months to get a response. But actually, it turns out Halo were like in the middle of unprecedented growth because the entire sector decided to implode with Kaseya buying Autotask. And actually, it was a bad time, but a good team and a solid product. And that's rarer. I think usually we found poor sales processes kind of indicative across the board of a rather shoddy admin foundation. I'm going to do the same ranking just for the sake of completeness.
Yeah, let's do it.
As Tim. So cost is not my number one, but it is definitely in the top 3. It's not my number one purely because we often have a little more a single non-profit discounts kind of, definitely get where you're coming from. You have some power to affect pricing. We have a little more when we can go to a vendor and say, 50 non-profits. What are you going to do with the pricing? It tends to be a little less of a factor. It's important, but it's not number one. Number one for me is going to be compliance. Like, how well are they meeting their compliance regulations, but also, do they meet the compliance regulations of every customer we've got? Because actually, if they can't get through that hoop for us, then it's a non-starter. And we've got fairly well-aligned compliance requirements, but we have some really weird outliers. We have a non-profit who works with journalists reporting currently. Predominantly, a lot of the journalists are reporting in Russia. So like, anything Russia funded immediately is just like even if there's like one investor, it's immediately causes a whole sort of red flags and a whole fun compliance journey with lots of forms. So we try and weed those out early if we can. But I think my second most important one, and thanks Robert for spoiling things. God, these Roberts can't take them anywhere. Integrations. It's one of our major criteria and has been for a couple of years now. Like, if you haven't got a public API, if you haven't got tight integrations or the facility for us to build tight integrations, you're really not getting through the door these days. If we can't tie you into our automated workflow, we're cognizant. We work with nonprofits. We keep our per seat price commercially is expensive. Our per seat price to nonprofits is ludicrously cheap, and we keep it that way through automation so that they can spend more money on frontline service delivery. So yeah, it's a key thing for us, automation, because that's where we make up for cost.
Mikey, I have another. I was thinking about this in terms of, it seems like a lot of your criteria obviously is based on In Tim's case, your own organization's the compliance standards that are required and things like that, or your client base. In your example, I think about kind of like a risk, like your risk appetite, and not just in terms of security, but also like in terms of early adoption. I guess I think about the quote, you don't get fired for hiring IBM or whatever. Versus like there's a lot of folks, depending on who they're working with, they're able to go in and do more with open source or be more about, putting your own workflows together. If you have a team of engineers or whatever, and you're trying to do that, versus veering towards, I imagine, like depending on your organization's risk appetite or your clients, that's going to dictate some of that too, how much you can develop on your own or work with these other lesser known entities versus kind of more mainstream stuff. Is that fair to say, do you think?
Yeah, it's very fair. We also we have built stuff internally, and admittedly not for a while, contributed to external stuff. So I think version 2 of SIP's theme was me and a couple of community members basically kind of wrote it over a weekend. It was terrible. It was better than version 1, but it was uniformly terrible. And what SIP looks like currently is absolutely stunning and far better by comparison, night and day. But yeah, we've done those kind of contributions because almost selfishly, because actually there isn't really a commercial tool out there that we can put in that meets all our compliance regulations, whereas actually self-hosting SIP, we sponsor SIP and we self-host. But yeah, self-hosting SIP allows us to kind of run around a lot of those compliance challenges. We built our own compliance tool. In the UK, we have Cyber Essentials. It's like SIS, but if SIS was designed by a bunch of people who really knew that actually to get everyone to a cybersecurity standard, you have to pitch it for very basic common denominators. So it's like SIS if SIS was designed for every organization to have. So I know
Australia has the Essential 8 as well.
Yeah, right. It's a sensible-ish baseline. So we built an internal compliance tool that pulls data from 16 systems currently. We're about to add 2 more across clients and evaluate security posture against Cyber Essentials. So it'll pull from client Salesforce instances, our Ninja, our Halo, Microsoft Intune 365, and evaluate all their security controls at once. So we have a dashboard for clients, and we can see at any time how they match up against the standard and where they're drifting. That alone saves us so much time, but it's an entirely in-house thing, and no one's building those kind of systems. But actually, sometimes you do have to get your hands dirty to run around those compliance challenges. I think I don't know that there's a way out of that.
Graham, let's go over to you. We got about 15 minutes left. What about your criteria? Any other things that you wanted to add that you think about?
Yeah, so I guess my number one, and this might fall under when Tim was talking about usability, but when he was mentioning that, he was talking about how well can his users use it. Maybe you define this more as function. Does this tool do what I want it to do, and how well and effective does it do it? Yeah. I've inherited tools that are from industry leaders, and they don't work very well. Stuff gets through all the time, and you don't have good reporting. You can't even justify getting rid of it, let alone keeping it, because you just don't have the data from it. So am I putting out a tool that's operating, doing exactly what I'm paying it to do? My number 2, I tend to look at a vendor from a business perspective and be in the mindset of, is this someone that I can easily do business with? Are they going to make things hard? Is my account manager going to disappear after I sign off? What is it like getting support? Has the company been through, this is the one we talked about yesterday, Mikey, that you're interested in. What's their merger and acquisition history like? Are they just getting bounced around like a volleyball, and you don't know where they're going to land, if they're going to be, a viable option moving forward? I've got experience in companies that have been acquired and have done acquiring, and I can say that in a lot of cases, they get a good product might get snapped up by a bigger company, and then there's not really any further investment into it. It's almost like they're buying a customer base. And there's a lot of companies out there that are in that category of, that too big to fail, that just seem to acquire good products, but they don't really do much with them after that. So, what does the future of that product look like, and is it a positive outlook? And then, tied for third would be the general security or compliance of the organization and the tool itself, along with the integrations. The technical aspects of things are things that we're predominantly all very familiar with. Depending on the years of experience you have and the depth of that experience, you can eyeball a tool and know whether or not it's going to be somewhat decent and worth your time, or if it's just not going to meet the need of what it is that you want within a few minutes of getting a look at it, usually, right? But those other aspects of it are what's going to make long-term success, possible.
I think those are great points, and things that kind of veer outside of the, what you would think of specific, like in the weeds software evaluation. You're taking the bigger picture here of what's the future. Having that, I think in the MSP space in particular, I mean, there's a long history of this where you can see the kind of life cycles of vendors and investment cycles, and kind of see where good products, what happens with them over time. And I think you have to be cognizant of that, right? Let's for wrapping things up. I'm very interested about these intangibles, but let's go deeper into the software evaluation itself of the tool. I'm interested in what you guys do to make sure that you're getting that sense, Graham, of what you're talking about. Does it do what it's supposed to do? We see, like, well, I guess another way to put this, we're looking at getting other viewpoints, right? And getting that experiences. Give me the real talk. How important is Reddit to evaluation? And the reason I ask this, we see it all the time, right? This question comes up nonstop about, okay, guys, I'm considering a product. I mean, I laugh about it, but whenever I'm looking to make a big buy in my own personal life, I go to Reddit because I want to see honest reviews, right? And our the MSP subreddit has this spreadsheet that I'm linking here, that I think it's fairly well maintained and updated. But it basically gives like specs and some they started adding some other kind of company information and things too. But I guess what I'm asking is, when it comes down to evaluating that actual, will this do what it says it's going to do? Will it fit our needs? Having something like this, where you're just looking like at specs, how important is something like that? And how important is it to actually dive in through trials and things like that with people who are actually going to be using the product and getting their feedback? How important are those two things?
Critically important. If you go off the specs spreadsheet, it's quite easy to get yourself to the point where you might consider something like ConnectWise Automate and Ninja, and let's say you were comparing those two. If you go purely off the spec spreadsheet, ConnectWise Automate on paper looks like the better RMM. It's got more features, it's got more mature features, it's got broader features, but actually using it is like swimming through molasses. It is hell on earth. Trying to get it configured will cost you a small fortune. You'll need to sell your firstborn child. There's so much of actually, is this fit for purpose, that you can't boil down to a spec sheet in the IT world. Like, so much of it is like, how does the user interface feel? Like, on paper, I mean, you're never going to lose your job in IT really for pitching Salesforce. But like, of those of us in IT who've looked at Salesforce systems, and we've got 6 customers with various types of Salesforce databases and a bunch on Dynamics and some on custom builds. The Salesforce ones are as varied as the comparison between Salesforce and Dynamics and the custom ones, because it depends on who built them. And Salesforce, for this flexible CRM engine, can be phenomenally well built, or it can be like the one client we've got where every box in their Salesforce instance is out of order for the way they process their client group. So like watching them do triage for clients, and they are jumping around this screen looking like they're schizophrenic almost, because when it was built without their input. So for actual hands-on evaluation, like 2 tips. If you are the decision maker in your MSP, if you're at the director level, definitely evaluate and use the tool, but also make sure that your newest, your greenest tech or staff member and your accountant, your absolute, Ditzy Doris in the back office who does the billing every month, make sure they're in on the early evaluation too. Make sure the people who have trouble with your existing tools or have the most niche needs get in on the evaluation, because those are the opinions that are going to make sink or swim. You don't want to, we've all probably all done it at one point where you piss off the finance person with your tool choice. Nothing sours the entire organization on you faster than the finance person saying, I can't pay your wages on time this month because of this tool that the IT guy rolled out. Just give up. So yeah, bring in broad perspectives.
But it's true, and honestly, that's kind of why I jumped in at the beginning with, I go put myself proactively in those conversations about what tools people need. I go stick my nose where traditionally IT has not existed until I started here. I don't know if I shared that. So a lot of this is new. A lot of this is 40 years of company culture, and then here comes Tim. Okay, now I got to swim upstream a little bit, but that means I'm saying, hey, I'm not here to make change just to make your day harder. I'm here to make change to make your day easier. You got to work with me. So let's look at it together. Hey, we have this tool. We have this, again, I'm going to go pick on AI. It's the thing that I'm spending a lot of time on right now. Let's go in on a trial of it, but you use it and I'll use it and we'll compare notes. Yeah. Along the same lines, Mikey. Like we do that too, where
as an MSP that gets difficult because in some internal tool, your RMM, your PSA, okay, can find user group relatively okay, bring clients into trial the portal, and we're golden. A tool across all of your clients when you're trying to change for 50 organizations at once, it feels like that's not possible to do. But I promise you, it takes longer, but it's so worth doing. Like bringing when we were changing mail filtering tool from Mail Hardener to Defender, bringing clients in and having them test drive what the experience would be like and getting their feedback and their pain points. So we had a plan to address them when we did rollout comms, and we could assuage that across all clients. It was infinitely valuable in terms of smoothing the rollout and preventing that blow up in your face thing where suddenly one bad word about the tool starts to sink it. Because that can be, sometimes you just can't come back from that.
Mm-hmm. No, agreed. It's different for internal, for sure.
Yeah. Another point.
The same approach, really, I think.
Yeah.
You still need to be cognizant of that at MSP. It's just a bit harder because you have more stakeholders you have to involve, but you do still have to involve them. You can't just kind of opt out as though this is too difficult, because that won't get you necessarily where you need to be.
Agreed.
No. Another thing you can test out too when you're in the early phases too is test support. When you're under a free trial, file a ticket.
Oh yeah.
See what happens. Every time.
Even if you haven't got a real issue, I have been known to, and vendors probably hate this, and I'm sorry to anyone who to anyone from Ninja support, whoever watches this, but like sometimes I haven't done it with Ninja, but they'll get it now because we're pitching it on a Ninja webinar. But like, so invent an issue if you have to. Find something small.
Yeah, make it up
and see what their response is. Also, throw a feature request at support and see what the process looks like for that when evaluating a vendor. If their support doesn't point you to where a feature request should go, or if you don't get a response to it, like you might, you need to probe then. Are they hungry for feature requests? Are they just not iterating? What's going on there?
Yeah. Join their version of the community too, right? So some vendors will have a subreddit, some vendors will have a Discord, some vendors will have a whatever, like just a classic old message board, Facebook group, whatever. Whatever it might be, go in and see how active it is, right? Like we're in the NinjaOne, and Mikey, you and I probably talk at least a couple times a week. We're interacting, maybe. Like
it depends. I kind of like a genuine.
You disappear once in a while.
Messages from people thinking like, hey, have you died? Because I disappeared for like a month, but no.
Yeah, you did disappear.
I tried,
but it's the chat is active. Like you can go in
Yeah.
there at any point and there's a new message, right, in one of
Yeah,
the
100%.
channels that you hover
It's
in,
active.
right?
It's alive. Not all. Yeah,
But
some
you
places
go in.
are not.
Yeah, like I've got other vendors that I interact with, and you go in and there hasn't been a message in like 3.5 weeks, and it didn't get a response. Like it's not monitored. The subreddits, they might have one person who combs through it once a week, and maybe they'll like the vendor will comment on something, but it's just check those things out too, right? Because those are the things that are going to lead to a successful use of a product.
And
The amount of
who's in
times
the community is also really important. Like some vendors, the only people like participating publicly are like marketing folks, and that's
Yep.
that's kind of like, for me, that's kind of a bad measure of community health. I think Ninja. Yeah, I think Ninja's kind of got this right, but Ninja came at this from the right way as well. Ninja saw an
Yep.
existing community that had been started by the community. Steven, you're to blame for all of this. And actually, Ninja kind of made the arrangements, not forcefully, not by throwing their toys out their pram, but to gently take ownership of that space and shepherd it into what we have now. This predates Ninja's like running of a community, and it's like, but Ninja have done what I don't know another vendor that's done this with community. So don't use Ninja as the benchmark. This is very important because no one matches up to this level. They should.
Well, here's the thing.
But
we should be using this as the benchmark, right? And trying to make other people
using
be
this
better.
Aspirationally, for sure, but not as like your criteria must have community equal to or better than Ninja, because your available vendor pool is Ninja.
Sure, but they should be striving, right? I mean, look at the other aspect of it. Look at the published. If you're a Ninja customer, you go in the help menu, you've got access to the Trello board. You know what's coming.
Yeah.
Like, there are one or two other vendors that do start to have that now, but it's transparency, right?
Yeah.
It's, like, I know that these features have been heard, they've been voted on, and they've been through some sort of development meeting where they've actually scheduled it or said, yeah, we should do that, or no, we're not going to. And, you kind of lose a little bit of visibility after that, but it's still there, and the cards do move around after major releases, right? So, it will be hard to find someone else. It is alive, and it is going to be hard to find other vendors to live up to this standard, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't try to make them hit that standard either, right?
100%.
Every time I do a call, do you guys have this board? Do you have this community? What's this like? I said every time, NinjaOne has this. They're my primary vendor. What is it going to take for you to try to strive to that level of transparency? And a lot of times there was like, we're not going to. And I'm like, okay, well then we'll see you later.
Well, I think. Go ahead, Tim.
Sorry, no, I was going to kind of do like a 1 minute little segue. Just from internal, from the internal perspective, right? I think, and maybe this is helpful for those in the MSP space as well. I think a lot of what needs to happen here, as you're evaluating software evaluation, meta evaluation, as you're evaluating that, there does need to be. It may be written, it may not be. I would really advocate for written process, thought through process, get a lot of buy-in on this. Formulate a process. Make sure you're doing the consistent thing with so many different vendors, every vendor, and just it has to be consistent. Otherwise, you're going to go crazy. You're going to be chasing it. Every ambulance that goes by. You're going to run yourself ragged. You're going to burn out. Just keep it simple, right? You do need a process. It's going to take time. And if that's something, again, but if you have a process and you understand how much time it's going to take, hey, CFO, I'm spending 40% of my time doing this. If you want the other 60%, to be less, to be more, if you want me to be doing support more, you're going to have to bring on some people to help me with this, right? You're seeing green lights across the board instead of massive dumpster fires everywhere else. Just by you taking a step back, that's, I guess, my advice distilled. Take a step back. Think about the process of how to do this. get feedback on that from across the organization, from across all your client base if you're an MSP, because I would love to, have an MSP that tells me, hey, we want you to be a part of a focus group for these things. I would have killed for that. And our organization has chosen to just go strictly internal, and that's just the call they made. But in the MSP space, like as an internal looking outward, I would kill for that. That would be amazing. So I guess that's what I wanted to say there on the adoption side.
For an MSP, it's increasingly hard to demonstrate value. And as you were saying, like you got rid of your MSP because you were paying a lot and you couldn't see the value they were bringing. And in some cases, they're just not bringing value. There's a lot of MSPs where that's the case. In other cases, when you get to a certain level of automation as an MSP, or you've got your processes down, or you've got your clients onto like a really good level footing where they're not having issues, it can be really difficult to demonstrate value. This is a way of demonstrating value. The fact that you're doing this, and you should be sharing this process with your customers, partly because they should have a process like this when they're doing evaluation of tools internally, but also because this is part of the value you bring. You are regularly evaluating the software tools you're putting on their machines to keep them secure and keep them functioning. That's part of the value you're bringing as an MSP. The fact that you're doing it at scale, the fact that it's, something you would be doing anyways, almost irrelevant, it's still value you're bringing.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on, and I'm going to issue a challenge to myself, and I'll distribute this challenge too. But in terms of helping people get that process in place, Tim, one of the great things about the Leadership Lab, and that you've contributed to personally, is there's a lot of people sharing templates of things. Like here is, it's a work in progress, but here is basically, here's what our process looks like, or here's a checklist or whatever. If anyone has something like that for their software evaluation that they want to share, do it in the Discord if you're a member. If you're not, join the Discord. We'll put a place for that where you can get the access to the recording to this. And I guess the challenge for myself is not to wait around. I'm going to go to Ninja internally, see what we can share for that, to give people at least something. Sometimes it's nice to have something to just kind of, not just the blank page to be able to work from. But guys, thank you so much for taking time out to do this. This was a really cool conversation. Really appreciate you all. Thanks everybody in the chat. And and we're going to see you guys very soon. So we've got a couple of big things. I'm going to plug, I'm going to take time because I am in marketing. There's a couple of big events coming up. One next week, speaking of AI, like I said, we could have a whole stream around this. We actually are having a webinar series specifically for the MSP world, but I think we can have a future stream. Tim, I'd love to talk more to you about your AI evaluation and dealing with shadow AI, of which I may or may not be a problem of internally with Ninja. But we have an upcoming webinar series kicking off next Wednesday, September 17th. We've got some really big name MSPs that are doing some cool things in terms of their own internal investment around AI, and they're going to be sharing around that. So it's a really cool opportunity to see how they're thinking about things, their strategy there. And then we're going to follow that up with a couple of, starting from that big picture down into like, let's get people on who are doing some more practical, tactical things with AI. And then we have 10.0. Mikey, you've had access to 10.0. Graham, you have too. Tim, I'm not sure if you have yet or not. It's dropping for North America, I believe. Oh man, I gotta get my dates straight. I should have this at the ready. It's either this week or next week. And the following week, the 22nd through the 26th, we're going to be having live streams every day of the week. We're going to have our product managers coming on. They're going to be doing deep dives. And there's a lot of cool stuff to check out in that new release. Again, we had lots of discussion in the Discord, but we'll be giving you direct access to the PM so you can heckle, you can ask questions, you can do all those things. All right, I'll stop blabbing. We've gone over, but thank you guys once again. Really appreciate your time. And thanks everybody for joining us.